Alright guys, so now in order to learn even more R&B and neo-soul chord progressions that we can play on acoustic guitar, we'll have to introduce something more about chord extensions. So you know when you find minor 9, major 13, dominant 7, 13 chords and so on. So basically the use of the numbers 9, 11, 13, but also another category of chords called 6-9 chords, okay, which are more similar to major 7th chord. Again, we won't have the chance to go too deep into all of the chord positions that you can possibly play when you extend 7th chords to 9, 11 and 13, but we'll be looking at some very important chord positions which happen to be played very often in this style, and we'll see how this actually can transform chord progressions that we already learned. Right, so let's start from a minor 7 chord. For the sake of this example, I'll be using a D minor 7 chord. Okay, which we played quite a few times already. Now what we want to do here is basically extending this minor 7th chord to the next note above the 7th, which you find when you harmonize the scale this chord is coming from. And I'm referring to the 9th degree, which is the note E, when you harmonize a D minor 7, and you'll get this position, okay, which has several flavors to me. It's definitely more jazzy, it's definitely more R&B, okay, and it's definitely also more Brazilian and bossa nova. Okay, it just depends on how you play it. Okay, now when you play it like we are right now, so with the second finger playing the root here, the minor 3rd moves on the D string fret number 3, and then you've got minor 7th and major 9. This is an omit 5 position because you have no 5th. You could potentially play that 5th here and get something like this, okay? It's another nice way of playing this chord, so feel free to try it. But for the sake of this lesson, we'll be only looking at this omit 5 position. So 1, 3, 7, 9. There is no 5th in here. So we started from a D minor 7 and we got now a D minor 9. Then the next chord I want to talk about is a major 7 chord, and for the sake of this example I'll be using a C major 7 chord, okay? What we want to do here is first of all adding the 9th to this chord, so get something similar to what we did to the D minor 7, and this is the position that we get, okay? This is a C major 9, which simply means a C major 7 extended to the 9th, okay? And when you play something like this, your voicing is root, major 3rd, major 7th, major 9. So again, there is no 5th. So this is another omit 5 position. Again, you could potentially play the 5th here, but it's not the most comfortable position to play. Okay. Now, this is a C major 9, but it won't be the only way to extend or change the voicing of a C major 7. We'll be actually looking into one more embellishment really typical of jazz and R&B guitar, and this embellishment this time happens to be on the G string, while previously, still on major 7 chords, we learned a hammer-on embellishment which happens to be on the B string. This time, the hammer-on, you know, happens to be so with a little finger, but it's on the G string. And which degree do we actually move to the major 7th that we've got here? It's the major 6th. So we are playing the major 6th degree and we are hammering on the little finger to actually replace the major 6th with the major 7th. So for that tiny moment where we don't hear the sound of the major 7 chord, we are not playing a major 9 chord anymore. We are actually playing a 6-9 chord, which simply means that compared to that major 9 chord that we talked about, we are now not playing the 7th, the major 7th degree, and we are actually playing the major 6th. So the new voicing is root, major 3rd, major 6th, major 9, 1, 3, 6, 9, as opposed to 1, 3, 7, 9. Okay, still both positions are omit 5, but it's really nice to hear that hammer-on which goes from the 6th to the 7th, okay? So in this way we started from a C major 7 and we got a C 6-9, which again could also have a Brazilian flavor. Again, it depends on how you play it. And then that C major 9, like like that. Now, one last chord that we need to look into in order to extend it, but also change a little bit something into the triads within the chord, is the G7, so a dominant seventh chord. Okay, now what are we gonna do here? We're gonna make this chord more modern and more R&B. Okay, and the way we do this is replacing that G7, which you can play in a few different positions, with this chord here. Now, what is this chord here? Technically, this is an F major triad, which I'm sure most of you already know, with a G note on the bass, F over G. You can write this down with a slash. For that reason, these are also called slash chords or simply inversions. However, the note G that you put on the bass doesn't belong to the chord F. Okay, it would be the second degree of F, and we usually don't have the second degree of a chord on the bass, or at least we can look into this chord from a different perspective. So thinking about the note on the bass, G, as the actual root, and understanding that the function of this chord is still a dominant function, so it hasn't changed the nature, the flavor of this chord. Okay. And what notes do we actually have in this chord if we look at it from a G perspective? Well, G obviously is the root, then you skip the A string, you play the note F on the D string, which is the -7, which again, it's a note that you find in the G7th chord. Then we've got the note A. Now, the A is the second degree, so we can think of this as an extension, as the major 9th degree, which is basically what we were adding to the D-7 and also to the C major 7 before. And then the last note is really interesting because it's a C, which is the 4th degree, and we generally don't have the 4th degree, but you can have the 4th degree when you don't have the major third in a dominant 7th chord. And anytime you play a major triad, guys, where you replace the third with the fourth, you get what we call a sus4 chord. Okay, so a sus4 chord is a triad where instead of finding the third, which will tell you whether the chord is major or minor, you actually find the 4th degree or the second if you are referring to a sus2. But for the sake of this example, it's the 4th degree, the perfect 4th, which will replace the major third of a G7 and will give you a G7 sus4. However, because we said that we also had the 9, this is a G7 sus4 extended to the 9th, and for this reason we call this a G9 sus4. Okay, particularly we haven't found any D, so any perfect fifth. The voicing here is 1, 7, 2, 4. If we look at 1, 4 and 7, that's basically a dominant 7 sus4 omit 5. Because we also add the 9, this becomes a dominant 7 sus4 add 9. Okay, that's why we call it a G9 sus4. The function is still the function of a G7, still a dominant 7 chord, extended to the 9th, but we replace the 3rd with the 4th. Okay, and we make it sus because of that. Up to you whether you want to call it F over G or G9 sus4, that's completely up to you. Some people also call this a G11. Now, I don't really agree 100% with calling this 11th, because when you just say 11th, you don't specify that you don't have the 3rd, and if you had the 3rd and the 4th or 11th together in the same chord, it might be dissonant. Okay, so I don't really like saying G11, but if you happen to find G11 written somewhere online, you might think that, okay, that's what they actually meant. They meant a G9 sus4 or F over G. So to recap this last chord, we changed the G7 into a G9 sus4, which is actually the same as an F over G.